Hello, this is Wil the Werewolf, and this is Werewolf the podcast. As I've mentioned prior, I'm bringing together some of the other episodes in what you might call a kind of callback kind of method to build a hopefully kind of exciting kind of story in the next few episodes. In this one, I'm returning to one of the characters in the vampire trilogy. I know there are only 3 episodes in a trilogy, but to be honest, the stories were too good for the vampire versus werewolf to be limited to 3 episodes. So the vampire trilogy became a 8ology, a quatology. I don't know, is that the word? It sounds about right to me. Anyway, I fucked up and made 8 of them, not 3. The character I'll go back to and meet once again is Phil, or the marvellous Phil, or whatever superlative Phil he is pretending to be today. He's one of those people that talk to the dead, what they called necrophiliacs. No, that's not. They're not fit. No, those are the people who fuck dead bodies, is it not? Fen's nodding, yeah. Okay. Interesting side note here. During the autopsy of Marilyn Monroe, the story goes that there were 16 different people's semen swabbed from her body. As I said, it's just one of those urban myths you hear of in the pub, but it's an urban myth, so they can sometimes be true. Why is that so weird that she had 16 men's semen in her? Well, the fact that there were 16 people's bodily fluids in her is pretty shocking, no? What do I have to do to impress you people? Or should I ask what Marilyn would have to do to impress you people? The bit that weirded me out was that when she was found, the coroner stated there had been no evidence of sexual intercourse at the scene. So there were no residues or anything of that kind on Marilyn at that point. To be 100% clear, she'd not been fucked at this point. But a few days later, there were multiple spunk loads on her and in her. That means that people had been shagging dead Marilyn Monroe. Now, shagging the Marilyn Monroe may have been one of the most extraordinary things to have ever done. She was one of history's greatest icons. I mean, I suppose if you count them, if you're that sad, you get loads of man points and all that, but who do you show off to about shagging dead Marilyn? I suppose you could go to your necrophilia support group. I don't think I could have shagged dead Marilyn. It's never great when they're dead and cold and unmoving. It just doesn't feel right. Sorry, where I was. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk to the full-on Phil. It shocked me at the seance I'd accidentally fallen into when running away from a group of fang-headed fuckers. He'd seen a lot of dead people. He was legit. He'd been seeing all the people that I'd killed in my werewolf murdering days, and apparently it was quite a lot, and they were somewhat annoyed with me for killing them. I think it was something similar to, the victims torturing the werewolf in Werewolf in London, but in this case, the person being tortured wasn't me. It was this poor Phil guy. They complained to him, and I couldn't see him. I hope it was like the classic film, and they're all rotting away in things like corpses and zombies. That would be ace. I wish I could see them now. Shame. Nah, there again, it would be good to see them, but I couldn't cope with them always being there. It would make taking a shit a bit uncomfortable, wouldn't it? I wanted to see Grand Phil for 2 reasons. The first was to do a head count of all I'd killed. I'd lost count in the early 1990s. It got a bit ludicrous with the number of bodies I was laying down, but I was once again interested in the numbers. If I ever have to write, an ending to my memoirs, it would be good to have the final murdering score of werewolves to humans, would it not? I think at the end of your life, you should have it on your gravestone. It could be like to have the number of people you've fucked, the number of people you've murdered, and then maybe the number of people you've fucked and murdered. We could even add the number of people I'd murdered and then fucked. But that was only 2, and both were somewhat of a sick accident. 2, you might question, would have, should you have not realised it was a wrong thing to do when you'd fucked the first dead body? Well, you know me, I believe you have to try something at least twice in most cases before you find out if it's genuine and vile. It is. That'd make an interesting Venn diagram to look at, wouldn't it? If we did the number of people you've murdered and then the number of people you fucked and then murdered. Sorry. The other reason I wanted to see Phil the Fantastic would be to try and contact someone I'd wanted to talk to for a long time. I wanted more than anything to speak to my ex-wife. Is the ex-wife the right thing to call her? My dead wife? My once wife? I met her for the first time a long time ago in St Andrews. I didn't even know I was married at that point. She was the first other werewolf I'd ever met, and she was perfect. We rebuilt our relationship, which I never knew anything about. Didn't even realise I had a relationship. Again, you can listen all about it in the Werewolf and His Wife episode if you wish. It would be easier than me trying to tell you all about it. I can tell you that I'd married her back in the history of my posit's interaction with other humans. Fen, Azza, that's my wife, and the human of his choice back then had married in the 1600s, and Fen had moved on from that human. I hope you kind of understand that. Fenrir had been partnered with 5 other humans throughout his time, and he'd married her when he was one of them. I do not know which one he was. I'll tell that story when I get to it. Oh, fuck, shit, now I have to explain Fen again. That's one of these things that it really annoys me with these standalone stories. Sorry to all those who know all this shit. I apologise. I love you if you listen to all the podcasts and join the Facebook group and do all that. No, I mean, I love you. You know what I mean. I've even given away my bloody art in competitions on there. That is how much I like these wonderful people. They get it. Dawn Porter, for example, she's awesome and won my piece Be Positive. It is a beautiful piece, mainly in red, due to it being painted with 144 people's B plus positive blood. You see what I did there? Be positive, yeah. Do you know how time consuming it is to take each victim's blood type? Well, she won. Thanks for taking part. I must love you if I give you my art. Back to Fen. Fenrir is my wolf soul. He is a separate ghost-like entity that is invisible. He has been around for thousands of years and is my chatty, wolf-looking best friend. He is the greatest and has been my inspiration and teacher since I was a baby. When I become a werewolf, he joins with me. We transform together. When we become a wolf, we do the same. I hope that's enough to be getting on with for now. The shock wife and I had fallen back in love. We'd done some horrible shit together and then I'd killed her. It was because I'd fallen out with my newly found tribe due to my posits past. Yeah, that's back in the episodes as well. This is a roundup of all those episodes. It wasn't my fault. It was down to our history. I killed her because I didn't want her to be able to be used against me as any form of leverage. You may also know that the wolf's soul is passed on when the werewolf dies. The soul doesn't die, just the human bit does. So I was going to see the wonderful Phil to try and find that soul owned by my wife, Azza. It wasn't hard to track down the stupendous Phil. He was working as a medium around the Manchester area, and he had a heck of a following on Facebook. 95% of the followers were women between 35 and 50, and they regularly went to Spectacular Phil's shows to speak to lost loved ones. Before this, I always thought that mediums were liars or mentally ill. I think anyone who tells you they can speak to your dead relatives, but it costs money, is horrible. Can you imagine telling a grieving mother that her dead son or daughter can talk to them for a fee? Do you need money to do it? You're like such a cunt if you do. A simple, mean-minded cunt. It's a bit like yoga teachers, all deep and meaningful and namaste and all that shit and spiritual as long as cold hard cash was paid for their time, you know, them being spiritual and shit. Namaste, motherfuckers. I always thought mediums were further evidence that some humans are as bad or worse than me. They were liars and con artists. I also knew that there are many mad people in the world and that they could just be mentally ill, which would be sad for them and also the parent who had lost a loved one. They could actually be thinking that they could speak to the dead. The mediums, I mean, thus giving hope to family and also supporting a sick person. It turned out with Dazzling Phil that he was actually legit. That fucked me up a little. It sounds a little strange coming from an individual like myself, but I find it hard to believe in things like the supernatural and the paranormal. I think that the scientific method explains things. Yeah, a werewolf finds it challenging to believe in fucking magic. It sounds a little stupid, does it not? Even to me. I can't help it though. I need things explained to me through rational argument. I also have learnt that we cannot always rationally explain everything. When the non-rational happens and I experience it, I have to accept it. I've learnt that we're just not at a point where we can explain everything that's going on. Magic, I'm sure, will be scientifically explained eventually. We just can't do it at this point in time. I think that people sometimes get a little bit lost in the fact that if we can't prove something scientific at the moment, that it can't be real. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. That's a quote right there from Arthur C. Clarke. Great writer, Arthur, and in this case he was very right. We might be able to prove magic in the future scientifically, but right now, we can't. So, how do you find Astonishing Phil? Well, it was way too easy in the end. It was Stunning Phil's job, wasn't it, to do this speaking to the dead. So doing the Facebook foray allowed me not only to find him, but book an appointment with him online to go around his flat and hire him for an hour to speak to the dead people I wanted to talk to. He was properly expensive, you know. And I ended up on a very professional website. I had to fill in many background questions for Phenomenal Phil, which made me think he would be doing a lot of research on me on the internet. That might be, for example, how we identified who had lost and who I wanted to speak to, maybe. To negate this, I made up a whole load of bullshit so that he couldn't trace or know anything about the real me before I arrived. I was going to be cold calling as it was. This was going to be a lot of fun. Fen and I were super excited. I told him I was a Kevin Higgins, father of two, a widower in my mid-40s. I'd lived in Levenshulme all my life, and I'd worked at North Manchester Fruit Preserving and Canning Co. for some 25 years, where now I'd got to the great level of processing plant foreman. Not a lot of information to go on there, and to be honest, Kevin Higgins didn't exist, although the factory did, so that would confuse the fuck out of Phil, which was always a fun thing to do. If you're going to lie to people, always remember to half lie. It just means that if they're intelligent enough to do some level of due diligence, they can never get a whole bundle of information about you. And the entire story may be true or may not be true, because some of it is true and some of it they can't find out, so they don't know. It freaks out the overly prepared, and the underprepared never try, so it doesn't matter. My meeting with Exceptional Phil was on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. at his place on Queen's Road in Oldham. Now, Oldham is known as a rough industrial town on the northern outskirts of Manchester, but I was shocked as I drove down Queen's Road. These were large brick-built houses converted into flats and businesses, and had a beautiful overview of a park. Remarkable Phil must have been making bundles of cash doing his shows and shit. This was a super expensive part of town to have a home in. I parked on the street and made my way up the drive through a well-tended gravel-based garden to the front door of a modern updated flat. I could tell it was recently updated by someone with no style but an idea of decorative fashion from the magazines, because the front door was funky round windows, brushed steel and battleship grey. This season's must-haves for those who follow fashion. I rang the Ring doorbell and smiled at the little camera as the speaker crackled into life. "Hello, can I help you?" It was an older lady talking. It was not Funky Phil, and I didn't think I was speaking to the voice from an ethereal plane, though judging from the accent and tone, she could have been called Ethel, which is a bit like ethereal. Ethel's a good old woman name in my understanding. You don't get Ethels or Adas anymore. It's a shame. I wonder if they'll come back. I bet they do. These names go round in cycles. I couldn't imagine a tiny baby called, like, Ethel or Ada, though, could you? Or Clarence. That'd be cool. I have an appointment with Phil, I told the lady. It's at 7 p.m. I'm just a few minutes early. Are you Mr. Higgins? She asked. At this point, I had to start taking the piss. I couldn't go to a medium's house and not take the piss a little, even if it was true what was happening. Fen giggled as I started my gushing enthusiasm. Overacting was one of the fun things that we enjoyed together, so it was time to ham this the fuck up. Whoa! How did you know? How did you know that? Can you, just get my name out of the air? Is one of my relatives already there telling you who I am? Honestly, Lisa from number 22 said that this medium-y thingamy is bullshit. Wait until she hears that even at the door, you somehow knew my fucking name. That's incredible shit. Are you a medium as well? That must be mad. Is everyone who works here a medium? I suppose that would help because you could take turns talking to the dead and shit. I spouted. No, sir, she interrupted. It's written here. Kevin Higgins, 7 p.m. You made an appointment on the internet. She must have thought that she had a right idiot, and I would make that more evident if I could. Fen at this point was upside down and laughing his socks off. I know, he's a werewolf, he doesn't wear socks, but if he'd have been wearing socks, they'd have fallen right off at this point. The door was buzzed open and I entered the white and battleship grey corridor to be met by a lady I had just talked to. She seemed to be employed because her colour scheme matched the decor. Her skin was so pale and she wore a battleship grey M&S two-piece. She was looking at me like you do when you stare at someone too stupid to make sense. She smiled grimly and waved me to a battleship grey door on the left that took me into a room for the séance. When I walked in, it was a bit of a shock. I expected this room to be full of ritual shit like crystals and posters of things we usually would only see when on psychedelics. I expected it to be dark and smelly and, like you see in the films. It wasn't. It was like a costly private consultant's room, all feng shuied and bollocks. I did not expect a kind of minimalist space with a very professional looking Phil sitting behind a glass and chrome desk. This place was actually sort of cheap chic and built on clean lines. I liked it. I could have had this office to work in myself. Hello, Kevin. No. Hello, Kevin, said the Phil at the desk. Sorry, I've run out of superlatives for Phil, so can you just recognise from now on that he was pretty awesome without having to mention it at every chance? He was a man in his mid-40s dressed in a Slater's menswear off-the-rack suit and was poor posh, if you know what I mean, new to money and not sure how to spend it yet. This was a little shocking at first because I knew the Phil to sound a little camp and give the gaydar ping of an aircraft carrier to my superb senses. Stereotypically, gay men have a certain panache and style, even if it is kind of crass. It tends to be elegant crass. Phil was looking over his half-moon glasses and steepled fingers, regarding me in a manner that would make me pause and consider that I was being regarded and studied and weighed and judged. He had obviously spent some money on a corporate body language training course, so I slipped into the next level of overacting and took on Captain Kirk manner of speech to fuck this up as much as I could. Hello. Change of provocative stance. You, I assume, are the Phil, I said, reaching a hand towards him to request a shake that would obliterate the carefully planned ore-building plan of the Phil. I could see it had already thrown him as he rushed to stand and shake my hand. He was supposed to be doing all the offering and directing. I was now in control of the conversation, which was everything he did not want. This was not how it was supposed to go. Bobby Lee, the guide at the Body Language for Work Weekend, never said anything about this. I shook his hand and quickly took the seat before he offered, again taking control of the situation. In the big black leather chair, I crossed my legs, I leaned forward, overly attentively, and steepled my fingers, resting my chin on them. Phil had been lost in this process as again it threw his training off. That's £500 and a weekend going around the roundabouts in Milton Keynes wasted. As he sat, I thanked him for sitting and asked him to make himself comfy. This even fucked him up more mentally and left Fen my posit. He couldn't breathe anyway because he's not a living thing, unable to breathe because of the laughter. Okay, I'd been enough of a dick now, so I would let Phil take control of the situation to get what I needed from him. He smoothed down his trousers and slowly managed to get back to some kind of level of sort of commensurate comfortability. Welcome to the ministry, he said. We've been tirelessly helping those from both sides of the veil for the last 20 years to reconnect and share the things they needed. Before we begin, can I get you a tea or coffee perhaps? Where was the really, really camp man from the stage? This was a very different man who sat before me. He was slightly camp. Oh, of course, that was a stage show. He was properly camping it up on the stage. It was a show after all. He gave the audience what they wanted, a non-threatening, seemingly very gay man. They would not want a macho, hetero man speaking to Auntie Doreen about Cedric's issues. Fen was trying to make me be more of a dick, but I held back. No, I'm fine. May I call you Phil? I asked, and he nodded. We have met before, but you may not remember, I said, and then paused. But that would be weird, because I'm sure as a medium you would know, wouldn't you? Anyway, I have a couple of things I want to run past you and see if you can help me. I was at your stage show a few months back, and you may remember, well, I'm sure it's almost impossible to forget, you saw the lots of dead people that I'd killed? I looked at the man now as the air had chilled by several degrees. His eyes strayed to his desktop phone and then back to me. I shook my head, admonishing him even for thinking about it. Not a good idea, I said, moving the white ergonomic phone away from his grasp. I assume you know what kind of person I am and that it would be a mistake for you to try and summon any help at this moment. Oh, that is unless you wish to be speaking to your dead friends face to face. He was holding it together pretty well. He nodded at me and smiled. I knew if he had a chance he would do all he could to get help, but now he was playing the long game. Seriously though, if you try anything, I'll rip your heart out from your chest and let you watch it stop beating. I've done it several times before, and I have to say it never gets boring. I mean, watching someone watching their heart die. It's awesome. Can you imagine, Phil? Can you? I said it in a very overly excited manner. Phil, can you imagine? I became a little perturbed and aided the man's judgment in realising that this was wildly out of control maniac who would kill him without any thought. He did not know what to say. I put him out of his misery because now I could see that this had done the necessary threatening and that he was very focused. I laughed. One of the things I would like to do is ask one of my victims at least how the process felt. It would be good to get some feedback on my work. I never really had the opportunity to get some, you see. I mean, they're not normally able to give feedback on TripAdvisor, are they? I laughed and addressed his left ear as I spoke. I have discovered that if you wish to look unhinged when threatening someone, stare at their left ear while you talk. This freaks them the fuck out because you appear to be fucking mental, as they say in Manchester. If you want to appear sane and in control, maintain eye contact. They then think you know what you're doing. I swap between both respective methods when threatening people. They both have their respective uses. I could smell the fear now pour off the wee man. This was going well. I also need you to contact someone for me. Could you contact my dead wife? Now, she may be a little pissed off at me and unwilling to talk. I mean, I suppose I did kill her, but I need her to know why I did and what for and how much I love her. Do you think you could do that? I asked him. He did really not know what to do. He just sat there seemingly in some distant happy place he had withdrawn to. I leant further forward to just, intimidate a little more. Did you not hear me, Phil? The man suddenly came to and nodded. So, then let's do that otherworldly shit and find me some dead people to talk to, please? Fen and I stood staring at the man. We were very excited to see how the process was going to work. The mighty Phil opened his collar and sat back in his chair staring at the ceiling. And then it happened. He started mumbling and warbling and then just freaked the fuck out. It was hilarious. He was staring around the room and he was terrified and it was fucking great. Ah, well, ain't it shit that we can't see what the fuck he's seeing, telepathed Fen to me. I know, right, I replied. The frothing Phil was rolling around in his chair, screaming and shouting at random things around the room. It was cool at first, but it was starting to get a little bit dull, to be honest. We, Fen and I, needed to hear at least what he was seeing and hearing. Phil! 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 I was shouting directly at him, but he was not getting it. Phil! Phil! I grabbed the fucked up Phil by the neck and shook him a little. Now, Phil. I held eye contact with him. Phil, listen to me. Phil, listen to me. He touched my face with his left hand fingers, but managed to maintain eye contact with me while drool left the left hand side of his face. It was a step in the right direction. I shook him again. Phil, tell us what you see. He looked to his left with a slack jaw and pointed. There's a little girl here, and she's crying, he said. Excellent, let's get to it, Fen jumped in. And? I asked. She's telling me her name is Shan. Doesn't ring any bells with me, Will. Me neither, Fen. She's a little Welsh girl. She's telling me she's 9 years old and that you made her kill her 4-year-old brother by scooping his eyes out with a Welsh love spoon. Sounds like us, I said. Does that narrow it down? Fen asked. I shrugged my shoulders. A little. I mean, I did kill a lot of little Welsh girls and I do love Welsh love spoons. We went through that phase, remember? There are so many of them. There's so many dead. Oh, God. And they're all trying to talk to me. The shockingly alarmed Phil exclaimed. I felt so proud. How many, Phil? How many? How many, Phil? I asked, but then I realised he was in no fit state to count anything. Here's another. Oh my God. He's telling me you made him eat his daughter's fingers while she still lived so that if he did it that you'd let her go and after he did you killed her. Aye, that was a bit fucked up of you, Will, Fen told me. I know, but Fen, he was annoying me. That he took, so long chewing them. Kids' fingers are easy to. Another man is reaching for me. He has a hole in his guts and things are unravelling and hanging out and there's blood and he's got blood all around his mouth and they are. I slapped fucking Phil. Keep it together, Phil. We're paying you a lot of money for this, you dick. Stay professional for fuck's sake. Don't you hate it when people lose their professionality in their jobs? It shows a lack of character. He's telling me you made him eat his innards while you watched. That was funny. Oh, I shared with Fen. Here's a woman. She's different than the rest. She stands before all of them. She's not saying anything. Now she's telling me her name is Azza. Now the silly filly had our total interest. That's the ex, sent Fen. Yeah, I remember, I flashed back. Fuck's sake, I've not developed dementia. She's all trying to speak to me, but I cannot hear her clearly. I must focus, Phil continued. She's saying you did the right thing. See, I told you, I sent to Fen. She understands that it was the best thing for us to do. I'm glad she gets it. Let's see what else she has to say before we get all cocky, replied Fen. She says that Sally is on her way for you. Does that make sense? Sally will make things right. I was a bit puzzled by this. Sally? Who the fuck? Oh yeah, now I remember. The interrupting Phil interrupted again. The woman! The woman! Oh my god, the woman is reaching towards me with her hands, and her hands are oh my god, they're turning into claws. She's asking me to tell you that her posit lives on with Sally, and she will find you, and what is she doing? What is she doing? Oh my god, oh please, oh. The man in the chair held his hands out, praying in supplication. No! He stopped, and his head fell forward and bounced off the top of the desk. Fucker was dead. I reached for his hair and gently lifted his head and looked at the dead man. I was proper furious. Prick died before he told us what she was going to do to him or us. Not paying him for the fucking full hour, that's certain. Fen was proper laughing at my discomfort. We don't know why the women are coming, Fen. It might be something nice. They might be coming to congratulate us and, catch up, Sally was alright. Even you admitted that. It might be fun. I tried to sound confident speaking to the posit, even though I was thinking, that's not what's going to happen. Fen laughed again. Nah, they're coming to fuck you up and you know it. Don't try and kid yourself. You can't kid a kidder, Will. I fucking told you she wouldn't take being murdered too well. Didn't I tell you? I fucking told you. You see, I told you. You did kind of fuck up Sally's life too. They're coming for you, Will. They're coming for you, Will. What the fuck are you going to do, Will? They're coming for you, Will. That's the end of a long episode, folks. Thanks for listening, and please remember that you can give me some cash if you like to support the show. Thanks to you guys, I managed to save it up and buy a new microphone last week. So cheers to those who bought me a coffee by following the support the show link. I bought some coffees and a microphone. There are links to all sorts of shit in the podcast description, in Santagram and Twitter and all that bollocks. Some people have even offered sponsorship for episodes, so thanks for that. And I'm thinking about what I want to be sponsored by. Yeah, it's a difficult one. Anyway, congratulations again to Dawn on winning the picture. The smell and stink will wear off in a few weeks, I promise, once it dries properly. Love you all. Bye.